Con.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube and you'd like to join the conversation, you can see a little link down below that has a link to the Zoom, and we'd love to have you here. If you are in the conversation, if you're here in Zoom and you are wondering how did some people end up in the panel and how did other people end up in attendees, it's because the folks in the panel showed up early. They had good internet, they had good audio, good video, and they got here before 6:40. So we open the doors at 6 o'clock. So between 6 and 6:30, I'm not going to promise anything. We're kind of, it's the original hour, and we just got kind of hacking about and talking, having tea and coffee, and just figuring out what we're going to do next. At between 6:30 and 6:40, we distribute the Discord link. The Discord link is where over 700 of us keep chit-chatting about all of this in between these shows. And then at 6:40, 6:45 is when we open up the mic checks. Once we've started the mic checks, it's too late. You can't be on the panel. So you need to be here. You need to be here by 6:40 to guarantee a seat in the panel. And so definitely get here early, and you're more than welcome. If you're watching what we're talking about, and you think that you have a better solution, have a better idea constantly, and it's tiring you to watch us talk about these things, when you have a better idea, you might. So we'd love to have you join and be part of the conversation. Between 7 and 8, we have a general Q&A. So we have 7 to 8, it's whatever questions you have around media production. We'll take anything and talk about it. I can't promise to answer it, but we'll do the best we can. At 8 o'clock, we have usually a specific thing that we want to talk about, and we'll do that for an hour. And so today we're going to have Victor is going to talk. Victor's here. Yes, Victor is here, and he's going to talk about basic composition. So how to build a basic sound bed, a music bed, and how to think about it as you approach it, which we're really excited about. So if you have questions for Victor around that, and he's going to be doing it in GarageBand, if you have questions specifically for Victor, just put music : and then let us know that that's what you're interested in. That way we'll keep those questions for the second hour. Tomorrow we're going to be talking about cameras in the field, how to manage them. Chris Summers is going to join us, and we're going to be talking about how to manage cameras and gear in challenging situations. On Thursday, Daria Musk, who is an incredible artist who's been doing audience engagement for a decade, is going to come in and talk to us about how she got there, how she got going, and what her process is. And then Friday and Saturday, we talk about education. So it's 8 to 9 on Friday and 9 to 11 on Saturday, or kind of whenever we run out of things to talk about. I think it's typically going to about 11:30. So we know that a lot of people are trying to figure out education, and we're giving them that opportunity. So Sunday is just kind of a relaxed day. So if you have questions, this is the time to ask them. We've got a lot of it's building number of questions, but we don't have as many questions or as many votes as we have participants. So everyone needs to pick up the pace a little bit. Ask your questions now. This is a good time to get it out there. And Phil, do we have any questions ready to go?
Good morning. Welcome back, Alex. Good to see you.
Good to be here.
Yeah. Paul Walhouse wants to know what's the quick and easy version of how to get set up and how to set up an iPhone with NDI tools on a PC and Android.
Does anyone have yeah, go ahead, Jeffrey. And then Stuart.
You can't.
iPhone too.
And there's no Android. They took down Android about a year or so ago. There's probably, I think Colin probably has the hack link that will do something, but you can't do it.
Okay, go ahead. Stuart, you were saying the same thing.
Same thing basically, but I'd actually downloaded the link that Colin may have suggested and tried it, and it didn't install on my version of Android at all. So that's on a Lenovo tablet. So I'd say you need the right operating system for it to work anyway.
Colin?
That's possible. Yes, so you can go find the version of the NDI camera for Android that was previously published by NewTek. There are other ones out there, but not in the App Store. There was another vendor, I think, who was announcing a version, and I gotta go find out what that was. I'll post it in the Discord when I find it. But to answer the question more directly, for iOS, you can install the NDI HX camera, install the NDI tools bundle from ndi.com, or is it ndi.tv? I think maybe both.
Yep.
And then if you're using Wirecast, the NDI components are built in. If you're using OBS, there's an NDI plugin that you can grab that will allow it to interact properly with NDI tools. And I think if you're using Mimo Live, I think NDI is built in. If you're using vMix, I think NDI is built in, and Leon will be able to correct me on that.
Stuart, and then Beiju. And then we'll move on.
Yeah, and NDI is definitely built into vMix. The other company that's working on an Android one is Sierra TV, I think they're called. They make an Apple version, and their Apple app is absolutely stable. I can recommend that on the one Apple computer that I have.
Beiju.
Yeah, just going back to the original question, if he has an Android phone and he needs to connect that to Mac OS, I think Ecamm is probably one of the more stable options. They have an app which works on Android as well as iOS, and they also have a client for Mac and Windows both. So you can download the client for Mac on his Mac, and then use the Android app and connect via wireless from Android, I believe.
Great. Next question.
5 stars. 5 stars.
There you go. Good. Next question.
Peter Collins wants to know, is there a recording online of just the mic check portion of the 0 hour to which I can point butting Zoom masters?
We don't actually record or we don't post the mic checks. Maybe we'll do that at some point. We'll turn it on so we can test the mic check. So hasn't been what we've done. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
A couple of us are working on videos on how to do mic checks in Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
That might be the better option rather than watching us.
Although it is interesting, it's interesting as people go around and talk about their gear. You learn a lot of different ways of connecting it. So, but yeah, I don't know if I would do it regularly, but maybe we do one and put it up there just so that people can see what the mic check looks like. Next question.
Charles Klein wants to know, can you connect other computers into the ATEM Mini Pro's multiple HDMIs? I want to quickly switch to other desktops. Absolutely.
Yeah, you should be able to do that. It should be just fine. Yeah, Chuck.
Sorry, I was going to say that's one of the main features that we recommend it to people is keeping your video playback or even your slides on a separate computer and putting that into the ATEM Mini Pro and using that as your webcam. And it keeps it nice and crisp and clear and also much easier. And you don't override with screen sharing what everybody else sees. And so if they had sometimes when you have multi-view or multi-desktop, if you do a screen share, it changes your windows.
Yeah, it's the screen share is super annoying. The only thing to remember is that if you're doing screen share with little text, that whatever you're showing might be a little too soft to read, inside of it. Now, if you can't see the text, it's probably too small. You probably shouldn't have made it that way in the first place for a presentation. So that's kind of our coaching for folks. Go ahead, Jeff, Francis.
We were testing out teaching Pro Tools via Zoom, and that's exactly what we found, is that looking at a Pro Tools mixer or edit was just too soft using HDMI of one computer in through the ATEM. We have to do the screen share because of the fine detail in that application.
Yeah, and that is definitely where Zoom falls down, is getting the frame rate that you need, and without the screen share, you just get lower frame rate, but it doesn't, like with an interface, it doesn't show up that you'll actually get pretty close to the same because not a lot of pixels are changing at the same time. So you can oftentimes get reasonably good frame rate, but don't try to premiere a movie with screen share, which I've seen people do. Paul, and then Hasmukh.
Yeah, I use a Toughbook, and it's got a touch screen, so I can pinch the text bigger or use Control Plus, to make bigger text. So that solves that problem, but it works great.
Hasmukh?
You mentioned using Apple TV hooked up to the ATEM before. What sort of application do you use that for?
If you, so the, if you, so if you want to play out, do a AirPlay. So I have an iPhone or an iPad and I want to show it into the switcher. The easiest way to get that in, if I want to keep it wireless, is to use an Apple TV. And so you just do AirPlay to it, and now you can walk around and show whatever you're going to show. And we've used those in sets all the time. We put the Apple TV right under the desk to just minimize any kind of throw, although that's not usually necessary, and works out well. Go ahead, Greg.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Thank you.
Next question.
Jeffrey Rees, 2 Fs. Alex, what accessories do you own for your Blackmagic 6K camera?
I don't have a lot of accessories. I mean, the main accessories that I have are, I use a small rig ectoskeleton here, which I get on just every camera that I get. And then I get some kind of exoskeleton for every camera so that I have lots of attachment points and it protects the camera as well. And then I have the Samsung, the small rig makes a little holder for your drive, and I have that. And so then that just, you have a little cable that comes out and in. And then the only other thing that I have is lots of batteries. Because you put the small rig on, I give up the ability to put the lower battery on. So I've got a big external battery that can power my laptop or my camera, and but it came with a cable that goes right into the camera, into this camera, and I'll go find it anyway. And then lots of little batteries. I have lots of little batteries in here just for when I'm shooting around. If I'm shooting anything long, I want an external battery. But if I'm just running around and shooting, I just have lots of Canon batteries. Since I have Canon cameras as well, it makes it easier to do that. Go ahead, Jason.
I have a ton of Canon batteries, and I find that they are basically useful for connecting between V batteries because that's about how long it lasts.
I mean, the other thing to know is that you have to get Canon branded batteries.
Oh, I do. Yeah. I don't have anything.
But I'm just saying that the other ones will die in seconds. It is like the cheap ones, and I think it has more to do with their communication with the camera than the actual battery.
Yeah, it's those extra pins, but also Small Rig makes a half cage, and I'm not sure if it's still current, but I like the half cage because it's much lighter, and I find that I don't use that side of the quarter 20s to tap it. I also have a larger and a more adaptable. The older SD adapter is kind of like a clamp, and it allows me to put SanDisk on there. It's a much more flexible mount. I found that that's handy, and I just got a shade for it that I've yet to try, so we'll see.
Stuart?
+1 on the small rig quality. I'll just back up what Jason was saying about the LPE6 batteries. They don't last. I've got them on the DP4 monitor on my Scion, and I'm changing batteries faster than I'm changing the V-locks on the back of the camera. But Alex, for your rig with the small rig, have you tried the wooden handles from small rig? They're like carved to fit in your hands, and they are fabulous. The tactile sensation when you're using them, like you're really 100% sure of what you're doing with the camera as you move with those handles.
I haven't shot with the camera that much handheld. I've done a little handheld, and so I haven't needed it. I think that the original ones are wooden camera, right? They're the ones that really made the original wooden handles and those ones are just handcrafted. I've seen them on Aries mostly, but I think that I haven't had to do that. Haven't had to do that very much, and so I'm pretty good at just cradling onto a camera. I'll post something I shot in India soon. I just haven't edited it together, but I shot someone making a paratha for me in a little stall, and actually I was looking at the footage the other day, and I was like, this turned out pretty well. I gotta put it up there, but I shot it on. It was testing the camera. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, one more thing. Small Rig makes a really cool quarter 20 mount that will actually help you route the cables. And it is so handy because
that's great.
Having lots of those cables in your way is a massive pain. It's cheap too.
Next question.
Chris S.
Sky, did you want to say one thing real quick?
Yes, I'm seconding on all the small rig stuff. I also put a V-mount battery underneath, and rather than going lengthwise like a traditional camera on your shoulder, I did a vertical concept that mount the battery underneath. It's a V mount, which also then powers my little 5-inch monitor that fits on top of that. Again, the build quality of the small rig is rock solid. There's also a mount that will allow you to tilt the little monitor that would go on top. So I actually add an additional monitor. I also put rails on it, thinking I was going to put a box in front, but have yet to do that. But the rails help if I wanted to go vertical. I mean, horizontal.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, rails are great when you start at follow focuses and everything else that in mat boxes. Go ahead. Next question.
Chris S. Anyone tried Jit.si as an alternative to Zoom in a production type scenario like office hours? If so, how did it go?
Go ahead, Lucas.
Yeah, we tried a lot of platforms since Zoom is not an option at our university because of data privacy issues and stuff. But Jit.si I have not found to be very reliable, at least if you use their official server. You could try to host it yourself, and perhaps that would work better, but it doesn't have this the kind of full-on functionality as Zoom has, in my opinion, at least, I'd say.
Go ahead, Jeff. And then Colin.
Same kind of experience that we've had too. We've done quite a bit of testing with it. It just isn't ready. And it is more of it's a smaller team for sure. But the biggest issue is how Zoom handles the multiple videos in. So Jit.si is a lot of times is trying to push all that content down, so your bandwidth needs on the download goes up quite a bit. Where Zoom
because it's trying to push full resolution all the time.
And so Zoom, on the other hand, is smushing it all together and giving you a smaller amount of bandwidth to go down when you're in gallery view, especially. Yeah.
Well, and the hard part there is that Zoom does do this thing. When you look at our edit, to cheat that, it shows you the last frame from that person right before it. So there's this weird flash that happens for like a frame or two between every edit that Zoom does. It's like a little jump that you'll notice if you watch the edit. And the advantage of getting full res down is not to have that. One of the things that we've requested from every company that we've worked with related to this, Google and everyone else, is that I want a production version of this where I can say I want all of that bandwidth. Not every person in the grid needs that, but a person needs to be able to activate it and say I want full res all the time, and then that would give me a bunch of other and then as many monitor outs as I want.
The tools out there don't exist for it right now, but there's no reason that we can't create the tool. And I've been working on WebRTC options and stuff to be able to do that. It's not simple. Unfortunately, it really comes down to numbers, especially one project I'm working on right now. We're looking at only 100 people. So that's somewhat doable. Right. But whenever you're talking about 300, 500 in a meeting, it's not feasible to be able to get that full res.
And you can kind of, what we're doing is really playing around with this idea of shifting gears, where the people that are speaking to like this in this environment, need to have something. And Jit.si might work well for this, inside of what we're doing. But then when you get into mass viewers, the real question is whether you need them all to be in the room or not. And that's the thing we're still questioning. Go ahead, Colin, and then Lucas.
Well, 8x8, who owns the Jit.si project at this point, and sort of subsumed the Jit.si team, they're a pretty large company. They've got significant resources for development, but I had much the same experience. We tried deploying it locally for a client. It functioned on a basic level, and their requirement was not, a huge scale. It was, individual 2, 3, 5, 10 people per meeting. My use case was to modify the UI to accommodate a sales mechanism, and it functions. It's not something I would consider. It's definitely not turnkey, and it's definitely not scaled to the level Zoom is.
Yep. Lucas, and then Paul.
Yeah, we used for other applications Big Blue Button, which works better in the scaled environment. So there is an installation for the whole state, for every university and every public school in the state here, and that works extraordinarily well, given that they just bumped it up in a matter of a week or something. But on the other hand, other functionality is missing. So you for instance can't stream to YouTube or something like that. So for the office hour setup, it also wouldn't work. So there are for different use cases you might find another solution, but this kind of this overall turnkey solution, I think, isn't there yet.
Zoom is pretty far ahead of everybody else right now. And the other thing that's interesting is that most of the security issues that when people made decisions about security in Zoom, it was a different Zoom. Like it is the level of security that is now part of this. I mean, I've done some pretty high-end Zooms that require a lot of security, and it's just a matter of how the user knowing what to turn off. You know, like you turn all these things down and I can make it as tight as I want it to be. It's just, you have to measure. In fact, we have clients that were government clients that they cringe at me turning it all the way down. I'm like, well, you're pretty high up in the government. I think that it would be useful for us to turn these dials up so that no one can get in. But then there's this issue of how hard it is to get in, and so that's so anytime you add that security, it just gets harder to get through the system and you lose people. And so that's what you're really weighing. But the security of the system itself is, I would say, is as high as anything else at this point. Go ahead.
Yeah, Paul. Still they would say it's just on premise. You have to do everything on premise. That's the thing, I guess. At least in our state. Yeah.
Well, the problem is that you I'm sorry, but people get into these things, these very academic, I would say. I mean, we talk about academic versus production a lot in what I do, and people will get into the absolutes of this is the way it should be and this is how we should do it. And they give up so much productivity and they give up so much efficiency for something that has not a lot of return, And so it's just it's a balance in many things. Go ahead, Paul.
I wanted to mention that I've been experimenting with a Jit.si server on AWS, and for the amount of bandwidth, the amount of power that they recommend, you might as well pay for Zoom. It gets expensive.
Yeah, my interest in Jit.si isn't so much the cost. I mean, it's really figuring out. I mean, the cost of Jit.si doesn't. I mean, whatever that cost is to serve it, it's really, can I customize it? The problem that I have with Zoom is that I want to do things with it that I can't do, and I want to integrate it with things that I can't integrate because you have very little control over this window that we've talked about this a lot. Colin's talked about this a lot. Is that the window that we're sitting in right now? We have very little control over. We have lots of ways of getting in, but it's hard to control this piece. And there's a lot of pieces that we don't like, and we'd love to make that more customized. And so Jit.si gives us possibly the idea, the concept of doing that, but we haven't been successful at making it work yet. Go ahead, Jeff.
My biggest thing that I'm finding right now for a certain application is being able to remotely on and off people, so that when, not just for video, but for audio specifically, I need to be able to have the capability of going, I want to listen to this person, but I don't want somebody else interacting and interrupting that person that's speaking. And that's the most challenging thing I've been able to not solve.
Yeah, we had that in and that's why what we do is do point to points to every person that we're doing in a conversation, because then they don't have, and it's great for us because we can bring them in and we can talk to them over comms and they can talk back to us through their system. There's no extra whatever. And we're talking to them.
For a full production, that's one thing. This is going out to a client that doesn't have that capability, but they still want the ability to knock them down. You used to be able to unmute. And that's the other thing, is to have somebody as a co-host to be able to unmute. You can't do that now.
I think you can.
That was a major privacy thing.
I think you can in the newest version.
Oh, really?
You may have to have, you may have to have the enterprise solution for that.
I'll have to check that, because that's a major thing, especially in corporate meetings and stuff too, is they don't want the CEO to have to worry about pressing a button, though they can.
We used the API within Hangouts a long time ago to be able to do that. We could control everybody's volume. So we get, we tied Hangouts into a hardware mixer. Well, not a mixer, it was a little Behringer, I think it's a BSC 2000, like a little motorized board.
Yeah, the faders. Yeah,
with the motorized faders. And so we were able to basically select people in the Hangout and manage their volume in the Hangout through that board.
I'm glad we went so far in the future now.
I know, because that was 2014. Anyway, go ahead, Phil. What's the next question?
Okay. Jeff Francis, has anyone used Olive an open source free video editing software. How does it compare to Final Cut Pro?
I don't know if any. I've heard of it, and I just haven't had time to go play with it. It's just been. Is it new, Jeff? Because it's something that I just started
As
seeing.
far as I know, I just downloaded it this morning and haven't even opened it up yet. So maybe I'll report back in a day or so.
Yeah, please let us know what you think. Ping that in. I'd love to know what your early thoughts are there. I've heard about it, but I haven't seen it. Next question.
Alistair Jolly, is there an easy, free way to do a mic check at home on a Mac to test my mic volume locally?
Easy and free. Sky?
Zoom.
Zoom. Well, but the question is to
Yeah,
get local
exactly.
meters.
Yeah, Zoom. That's
But
what
local meters is what you're trying to get there, Jeff.
Zoom.
I use the free download of Ulean loudness meter, which has a LUFS meter, and the free version is all you need. So that can take your audio input wherever it's coming from, and you can actually see the LUFS on there. And oftentimes I will open up QuickTime and do a new movie recording so I can check to make sure my camera is working and sound is working and do a quick recording in there and then listen back to it. But I'll put a link for Ulean.
I use QuickTime a lot for testing. Jeffrey, and then Greg, and then Paul. Quickly.
Two programs audio related, one called Audacity, absolutely free. And then for the Mac, you do have GarageBand. And the cool thing about GarageBand is you can bring in VSTs. So if you find some VSTs to meter like WLM or something like that, you can bring those right into GarageBand and do your testing.
The other thing to know is that, the Audio Hijack and these other ones, they put a hiss in 20 minutes in. But if you need to do tests, you can just open it up and use it. So if you only need it, unless your test is going to run longer than 20 minutes, just remember to turn it off. Otherwise, it gets into everything else. Greg, and then Paul, real quick.
Yeah, I think if you're going to use the Zoom, the built-in Zoom tester, four greens, and you're going to be pretty close.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll join the echo chamber and say Zoom also. And you don't have to start an actual Zoom meeting with other people to use those tools in Zoom.
Yeah, go ahead, Zach, and then Mickey.
Yeah, I use Orban. Orban has a free loudness meter. It's free. And I check my level before this meeting, and I don't make any changes when Mickey checks me. So it works really well.
Go ahead, Mickey.
It's free, Orban.
Yeah, I second the checking yourself on QuickTime. And I just want to clarify with what Jeffrey mentioned, like with GarageBand. Now this is being the whole nerdy. Well, technically, but yeah, GarageBand doesn't use VSTs. It uses AU audio unit plugins.
Next question.
Tanya Posavats. A client wants to use virtual backgrounds for all panelists so they are unified. I hate the way the edges of a person's head looks in front of a virtual background. Any suggestions?
Try to walk him off the ledge. Virtual backgrounds stink. Chuck, go ahead.
Yes, I agree. We have some events where they like all of their support staff or panelists to have the similar background and look good. And we've suggested instead of virtual backgrounds, maybe try and get like a pop-up banner so that they're unified and send that out to them. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that will go a long way. We actually did have a client who did that, and I was so grateful to them for doing that. But
if they're really
virtual
serious about
a lot of stuff.
If they really are serious about it, and there's some, I mean, I can spend the rest of the show talking about what's wrong with virtual backgrounds. And the fact that it's sharper than the person in front of it, the fact that it's garish most of the time, the fact that it's a distraction, the fact that it's inauthentic, the fact, and I usually, if someone talks about virtual backgrounds, I use all of those things in subtle ways throughout the entire conversation until I've usually beaten virtual backgrounds into the ground, because it's just, I'd rather see mess behind people than a virtual background. Jeffrey, and then Jason, and then Stuart.
I totally agree on that. In fact, I've been doing a lot of recordings for upcoming conferences, doing presentations. We turn off the virtual background, first of all. However, if they actually have a green piece of cloth and good lighting in front of them, the virtual backgrounds actually work really, really well in Zoom. So if they have that situation,
I'd say really well is a strong. I've seen it done, but I would say really well as someone who keys green screen footage. really
yeah,
well is a
it's
strong
yeah.
statement.
Yeah, okay. It works. It works a lot better. Sometimes it works better than me
problem is you
using
can pull a good key.
Wirecast or vMix or something like that. Yeah.
But you pull a good key and then it still is just weird, you know, behind you. Anyway, Jason and then Stuart and then Colin.
Yeah, Alex, you forgot one. It also requires more CPU than most people have to spare, especially because they've got 80, Chrome tabs open. But yeah, at the end of the day, if you're not going to do a key perfectly, don't do it.
Yeah, Stuart.
I had recent occasion to be in a Zoom call with people who everyone else at the other end had virtual backgrounds, and I watched as people would actually disappear and reappear depending on how much lighting was on them. The background was horrid. It was just horrid.
It's just a joke. You know, it's a
By
joke.
the end of the call, everybody had gone to how I had it with the virtual background turned off.
Yep. Go ahead, Colin.
To Jeff's point, if someone has the wherewithal to go get themselves a green screen, they should have the wherewithal to run a decent keyer and run OBS or Wirecast or something to do their key properly.
Yep. Like Chuck, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, the last statement I want to make is if you're going to invest in the lights and everything that you need to make it work properly, you could have just bought a pop-up banner for about $50, $60, $75.
That's true too.
Next question. I'm sorry, we didn't give you a better answer. It's just that there's not any good answer for a virtual background other than to get rid of it because it's just junk. You know. All right, next question.
Paul Shadwell's asking, he's got some problems with his MixPre 3.2. I'm using a 3.5 millimeter jack marked aux mic in and set the 3 input to mic, but I get no audio. The mic works if I plug it directly into my ATEM Mini. Any clues? I just want to add, this was a little hurdle I've had, and I know a lot of people have had with their MixPres. There's a little learning curve on some of this routing stuff.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, on your actual channel, you don't want to set the input to mic. You want to set it to aux in 1 or aux in 2.
Oh, aux in 1. Okay, perfect.
Because yeah, mic will expect a signal from the XLR input at mic level.
Got it. Next question. But
Michael
Paul,
J.
since you're here, wait, Paul, you're here. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. I'll give it a try.
Awesome. All right, next question.
Michael J. Hi, Alex. It's Michael Jones. Hi, Michael. I have a ton of mini videotapes. Really need to digitize. My camera is long gone. What's the best solution as I currently don't have a capture card? Should I rent a camera hardware? Question.
I would, to be honest with you, I'd use a service, but you know, there's a lot of services that can do that for you. And I wouldn't try to find a camera to make that work. I'm dealing with the same thing. I've got one. I don't even know if it'll still work, but I found an old one that I'm going to try to get pulled out. Go ahead, Mickey, and then Lucas, and then Phil.
Yeah, if Michael means literally a ton, then yeah, I would spend to get the hardware to digitize things. But if it's 50 tapes, yeah, just send it to a service.
Go ahead, Lucas.
Just for starters, is the clicking away? That would be nice. And the other thing I would want to say is that if you don't need a camera, you perhaps would find on eBay an older tape or something.
The issue is that not all DV is created equally. So if you try to play it back on something that didn't create it, a lot of times it won't play back correctly. So you can't put the tape into anything that was there. So I used to keep, with some of my DV stuff, I kept the DV cameras for a long time because it was the only way I knew for sure it was going to come back out. Stuart, and then Phil, and then Mickey.
Yeah, I think what you're referring to there is the difference between DV and DVC Pro and all of the different versions of DV. I've actually got an XL1 sitting here that I had to keep running simply because the heads were never perfectly aligned on it. I can't play tapes from any other DV camera in that, and I can't play those tapes in any other camera. Yep. These things are so small, they are super sensitive to any vibration or any unalignment in the heads compared to VHS. So you've really got to find the right camera for it.
Yeah, Jeffrey, and then Phil.
On the eBay thing, if you end up wanting to do it yourself and you get all the equipment that works with your tapes, make sure that you have somebody check it over and properly clean that thing, because it'll eat up a tape and then your project is pretty much to the wayside.
Yeah, Phil?
Highest recommendation to Scan Cafe as a service. I've done it many times. I have no affiliation. Really appreciate what they do in all sorts of photographs to videos.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
Yes, Scott Lawrence. I was just asked to record audio and video of a small choir, under 10 people. I have a Zoom H5 Rode NTG video mic and a couple of ATR 2100s. Assuming the Zoom H5 mic would be the best bet, placed in the center of the group with singers equal distance to the mic, any other tips?
Go ahead, Stuart, and then Greg, and then Jason.
I would actually set up an XY pair for the microphones if you got two identical microphones, so they're sitting one over the top of the other, right in front, and that way it gives you a stereo recording. Really try to have all the microphones be identical. It'll make things easier in post.
Greg, sorry, I muted myself. I was clearing my throat.
Okay.
Greg?
Yeah, you can use the H5 for that, what Stuart suggested. Like you thought, keep the H5, kind of close in the thing. I would probably, depending on how many of the 2100s you have, those are dynamic mics, so they're really only going to be good if you place them like right in front of the singer or in front of each two singers or something like that. So, I mean, you could record those two as kind of sweeteners. But the other thing I would do is I'd take that Rode mic, and I would point it towards the back of whatever the hall you're recording in. Like if it's a church or something like that, and get that room sound. I mean, you're gonna have to do some mixing at the end, but I think that's how you get the best recording out of what you have.
Jason? And then Mickey.
Plus one for what Greg said. Yeah, you'll get a very nice stereo mix anytime you have an XY stereo pair. But yeah, absolutely. Have you ever heard Gregorian monks without any reverb? No, you haven't. Of course not, because it doesn't exist and it probably sounds terrible. It's all about the space.
There's a good NPR. If you search NPR for it, there was an NPR where they talked about in some of these cathedrals that those chants don't sound correct unless you're in that cathedral, because they actually designed them for that cathedral. And so that, the whole reverberance of the cathedral and what it did, and this kind of circular move was of the sound was all built for that chant only worked there. And then what they did is they did impulse records of that cathedral, and then they were able to take all those mics and then feed it all back in, and you could hear what it was supposed to sound like, there. And so I found that to be fascinating. But yeah, you're absolutely right. The where you do it is as important as what you're recording oftentimes. Mickey, and then Jeff, and then Greg again.
Yeah, I'll just build on what Greg was saying. Like, I would actually have the 2100s as the main, and if he has five of them, put them like in between every two singer or every two kids and use that to build the stereo image, pan them accordingly based on position, full left, full right, and then the others in between. And then I would actually have the H5 as the room mic, of course, depending on what kind of room you're in. If you're in like a completely dead room like where I am right now, no point in doing that. But if you're in a room with a nice sort of reverb and ambience, then I would throw that H5 with the XY capsule, 10, 15 feet in the air, and then maybe further back to capture that verb.
Jeff and Greg?
So I'm not sure. Definitely, first thing, get the choir in a good sounding space with plenty of reverb. I'm not sure how close you can put the choir together with social distancing, but choirs like to be close together for good music making. You can put them in a circle, but it's great if you can have them in two rows and get the second row elevated. And like Mickey said, height is your friend, especially if you've got people that are certain farther away from the mic. Going up can even out that distance.
And Jeff, your audio is breaking up I think your audio is breaking up there somewhere, Jeff.
I'll check that. Thanks.
Yep. Greg.
Okay, kind of just to illustrate the point, I have a good friend in Chicago who's one of the best, I guess I would say, location mixers for choirs and orchestras, and he does almost everything with very few mics. For instance, this choir thing, he would probably use just two mics, what do you call it, bidirectional, at 90 degrees in a Blumline stereo pattern, but it's exactly where you place that stack in the room to get the balance between the live sound and the reflection, and then you'd be done. But I think either Mickey's way, where you use the 20, depending on how many 2100s you have, you can use those as the primary, pull the zoom back just a little bit, but I would definitely get the room with the last mic.
Yeah, we're going to move on because we're now going to go into speed round.
Just curious what the COVID issue with that is my question.
Oh, just you can't put people close together without masks.
Well, legally there's some issues to, I don't know what in different states.
Yeah. Next question.
Brian Davis, I am a simple attendee that needs a decent mic to work with my iMac to do a Zoom with my family. I appreciate I might need a splitter, so a complete reference greatly appreciated.
Go ahead, Greg.
Forget all that and just go get a USB conference call mic. I mean, they're cheap and they're not bad.
I mean, the one that we've been talking about here is the Pile headset mic, and it's $15. It looks like it. It's this little guy here, $15. You need a USB interface for it, and it's super simple, and it looks fine. It sounds better than the problem with the USB ones that are like a headset with the thing is that they're cutting off so much high end and low end that you're just getting right down the middle. And so the Pile mic, I think, sounds better than most of the conference ones. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
If you don't want to get a headset mic, a couple brands to look on Amazon. One is called Fafine. They do a lot of gaming. Look in the gaming section for any type of headsets and microphones. And then IK Multimedia does a great job in some of their microphones. You can check them out.
And we're going into speed round, everybody, because we've got a lot of questions. We started slow. See, the key is for the attendees is to start fast, not end fast. You want to start with lots of questions and then not jump on us at the end. So anyway, next question.
Johnny Estias, sure this has been asked before, but I can't find the answer on Discord. What are the in-ear monitor Alex uses, and why do you like them so much?
So I use Audio Implements, and they have lots of different versions of it. And the reason that I like it specifically, and the reason I use it a lot, is because it has lots of versions of it. So I can, it's got each piece. I can't hear you now for a second, but each piece is its own component. So this breaks apart. This is actually the speaker. This is the earpiece. This little piece that goes in my ear comes off. The cable here comes out. And so it's a very modular system, and it's really built. If I go into a professional environment, everyone's going to have this one. I mean, this is pretty much in broadcast. Everybody has the same kit. And they all use Audio Implements. Now, you can get a lot of other things that are cheaper. This is expensive. It's like $130 for the whole kit, as you build it up. There is this one. This is Auto makes this. We send these out to people. We don't usually send this one out because it's expensive. And so these are like $50, I think, that you can buy these little Auto IFBs. If you search on B&H, they're now available again. They were sold out for a little while. And then I think that there's been some links that we've had that Colin's put up, those ones that are like $10 or $15. And so that it's a wide range. I use mine because it's comfortable. I'm used to it, and it's modular. So if I need to change any bits and pieces of it, it's easy for me to do. I also have an extension, like a 3-foot extension here that gets it behind me comfortably. Jeffrey, 10 seconds.
Is there a difference between in-ear monitor and IFB?
No.
Not really.
Okay.
Not really. It's just oftentimes it's in Europe versus US. In the US, it's IFB and interruptible foldback, and in Europe, it's in-ear. Anyway, go ahead. Next question.
Jason is considering some wireless body packs for his in-ear monitors, trying to decide between Sennheiser, whose loves he loves, and Shure, who seems to be releasing some new stuff. Any thoughts?
I'm only familiar with the Shure they're 1000s. They're PS something or other 1000s. That's all I've ever used for well, that and Lectros for IFB returns. So I don't know the Sennheisers, that PSM 1000, right? And then the Lectros have a bunch of their own that I've used, but I haven't used anything else, so I'm not that familiar. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I think Jason and I talked about this offline like a month ago or something, and yeah, my suggestion was if he already has equipment from Sennheiser, like especially their ENG stuff, I would stick with Sennheiser so that you work within the same frequency bands.
Yeah.
That yeah, you don't
yeah.
have to juggle around different deviations in frequency.
Jeffrey, real quick.
To Mickey's point, if you get a wireless, get something that can be reprogrammed to multiple frequencies if some emergency band ends up taking over your frequencies.
There you go. Greg, real quick.
Yeah, if you wanted to use the Sennheisers, I think the only thing you would need extra is the line input cable into the, so you could send it out, and then you could have any number of people listening on the other end.
Yeah, go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, you can, because traditionally the IEM transmitter is a rack mounted piece of gear, but you can actually use the body pack transmitters to transmit to the IEMs. You just have to, as Greg mentioned, you need to have the correct cable to send line level into the transmitter, which if anyone wants it, send me a message on Discord. And you have to turn off pilot tone on the receiver.
Yeah, I've had decent luck with that. But yeah, the issue is I don't actually care about mono. I'd rather spend money on other things.
Next question.
Yes, John Well, what are you looking forward to at SIGGRAPH? What's new and cool?
I mean, the things that I'm usually looking for are photogrammetry and real time, and the mixture of those two. So those are the two things that I'm generally paying most attention to are real time stuff, what Unreal and Unity are doing, and in photogrammetry, and then usually whatever Cinema 4D is adding to their tools if they release something new. Anyone else? SIGGRAPH, for those of you, is like the NAB, but just for computer graphics. It used to be massive. It's gotten smaller over the years, but it is. I grew up going to it, so it's still a tradition to at least track it. Next question.
From Jeff Francis. Guy, in your discussion of your Sunday school yesterday, you demoed a Telestrator circling items on the coloring page. Can you talk through the hardware software that you used for that?
Sure. First, I'd suggest using the built-in screen share function and the annotation tools, because I know there's some teachers watching, and I don't want to be like, buy this $1,000 thing and this other $1,000 thing and start talking Alex's. What's the going rate for an Alex anyway? Is it $700?
It's still $700. We don't have inflation. Yeah,
I wasn't sure if it varied with like gold or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. We peg it to the gold standard.
The one that I was using yesterday was just the iPad Pro, and then somebody, I think it was TJ Worrell, suggested a USB extension cable because I was putting so much pressure on the Apple AV cable, which is this one. So this is how I'm getting HDMI out, is the Apple AV extension cable. So it's just USB-C to HDMI, and then it's into the Mini, and then, oh, it's not hooked up. I don't have it hooked up. So anyways, it's then Apple Pencil, and you can just draw right over the top of whatever Keynote slide. So I was actually using just the built-in tools in Keynote, and the other one that I use is the Microsoft Whiteboard. So those are the two apps on the iPad that I use, and I can draw right over the top.
Next question.
Roger Miles says, my wife and I have been using $80 headsets on our Dell laptops with Bluetooth for Zoom meetings with success. We have spent over $100 trying to get Colin's Pile mics to work. Can't get enough gain. Is there a better solution for just under $100?
The other one that you may want to look at is the Samsung 10T. If it doesn't work, send it back too. If you're buying them from Amazon, they'll take it back.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah,
I mean, we acknowledge that it's likely that there's a QA problem there. I'm surprised that you've had that much difficulty with it.
Well,
I mean, I've had one that failed out of like 5.
I don't know if it's failed. It's also, it depends on how the Dell manages the interface and so on and so
Well,
forth.
I'm
Also,
still
if you're plugging them,
concerned that I was still concerned that in some cases you don't have enough amperage going through the USB interface. But I think that test was conducted and it looked okay.
I think
well, and also
I'm still
if you're
baffled as to why that's a problem.
If you're plugging the mic directly into an input in the
there's
Dell,
the problem. There's the problem.
You're not going to get enough. You have to get the analog to USB converter, which is $15. The one that I have is like the TechRise.
There's the problem.
There's not enough. Most computers will not give you enough gain in their direct input. That's a constant problem.
TechRise. TechRise.
I use the TechRise. Colin has a different
the other one that works similarly is the Sabrent.
Yeah.
There we go.
So yeah, so that you can one of those ones. So go ahead, Beijing.
But they're all essentially the same theoretically.
Yeah, I would say rather than before spending money on the Samsung T, just get a proper smaller audio interface. You can get decent ones for around $50 and maybe a phantom power adapter. So about $60 or $70, and use the PAL mics with that. You'd probably get better results than just because with the Samsung, it's about $150 investment at least.
All right, we're going to go super fast now. We're going to go super fast, everyone, because we're running out of time. So next question.
Kyle Hammond, what is the ETA of Alex's Telestrator setup video?
Hopefully this weekend. Every weekend is the time I can do it. The weeks are I start with you guys and I end at about 8:30 at night. So I don't do anything during the week, but hopefully this weekend. We had I don't know how much we bought a lot of constellations last week. So I should be able to get that sorted out relatively soon and get it back. So anyway, next question.
Michael Vosbein, there are people working on creating the ability for musicians to play live with each other remotely in real time from multiple cities. Others argue that given the present understanding of space and time, latency will never be manageable enough for this to work. Your thoughts, please.
Jeff, real quick. Jeffrey, real quick.
There's an awesome video. I can't remember who put it out. It talks about this whole thing and how you're trying to beat the speed of light is basically what you're doing, even with fiber optic cable. And they found that under 500 miles, you might be able to get 2 people to do it. But other than that, it's unless you have a way to do that, you can't do it.
We've done it, but it's a global click track. They're not actually playing with each other. So we've actually had musicians perform together, but they have to have a global local click track to do that oftentimes with backing or accompanying that they can play into. And they're all hearing it at the same time, but they're not hearing each other because of the latency. And the one that we've done has both been over Hangouts, another one's over fiber, and still needed it to make it work. Victor?
No, I agree with what Jeffrey said. We've been looking at this, Jeff Francis, myself, and some others, and so far we have not found a solution that is viable. And it's probably that physics thing.
Next question.
Yeah, Kyle Hammond wants to know, anyone have suggestions for travel road cases for the ATEM Mini Pro?
Pick and pluck with a Pelican.
A tiny little Pelican that will actually fit. I don't remember the number, but it fits.
Yep. Go ahead, Victor.
I've heard that the Nintendo Switch case fits it perfectly.
Oh, there you go. That's hilarious. All right, next question.
Roger Munch, how would you build the Mukana audio chain, Zoom audio hijack audio streaming service on a PC?
Yeah, go ahead, Lucas, real quick.
Yeah, the audio hijack part you could do with a voice meter, and then you would just need some kind of audio IceCast client or something like that. Mix, for instance.
Yeah, IceCast will do what I'm doing there in audio hijack. Next question.
Lucas Herzog wants to know any recommendations for sound bags for medium-sized recorders like a Zoom F8N or MixPre 6.
I can't think of the names right now. Go ahead, Nikki.
Yeah, I don't know exact models, but the popular ones are the bags from Orca and the K-Tech.
Yeah.
And of course, Porter Brace.
Porter Brace is the ones that I've used the most. But the K-Tech ones are really good too. Go ahead, Greg, real quick.
Yeah, no, that's I was going to say the same thing.
Okay. Yeah. Next question.
James Babbitt, what other interfaces do you recommend after the MixPre for a quality mic preamp and overall versatility?
I would say the USB Pre too, but more expensive than the MixPre. So so that I'm trying to think of ones that we like that are. The hard part is you get really spoiled with those preamps and the limiters and everything else, and it's really hard to you
Behringer.
get frustrated with a lot of them.
Scarlett is pretty decent.
Yeah, we've had a lot of issues with Scarletts is the problem. And that's why they die in the middle of a show, or they die while we're doing rehearsals, and and no settings change, and suddenly they're off air. And so that's been the Scarlett Solo, I believe, or they've just been
they've got
nemesis.
a whole line of them.
But all that whole line has been like a nemesis for us because we have all these musicians that we're bringing in and it hasn't worked. Lucas.
Yeah, I use the Motu, the smallest Motu ones. They're not as cheap as the Scarletts, but I used Scarletts before, and the difference is the difference is insane for the price difference. So they have they have an on-off switch which is nothing else has an on-off switch, and they have you can what's the word, do the phantom power per channel, which is also not really common for the smaller one.
And the one that I carry around a lot that I've had for forever is this little X2U. I don't know if they still make it. The Shure X2U is the little thing's built like a tank, and it's great for a single camera. It's not incredible, but it works. Jamie, did I see Jamie? You had your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like Lucas, I just got myself a Motu M4, and the MicPres are incredible. I think they're using the MicPres that are on their high-end units and putting them in the smaller one. So it might not be as convenient as the MixPre to carry around. I haven't tried it because I don't do location sound, but it's a good size and the quality is great. And it has a few other features that I'm loving is the loopback, and you can monitor and hear yourself before it gets to your DAW, so if you don't have that latency. So that's a good one to check out, the Motu.
That's great. Thank you. Next question.
Tony Mobley using an Ecamm Live Keynote and he sees 1080p webcam but can't get sound from the Keynote into Zoom. Any thoughts?
From the Keynote into Zooms. Oh, go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, in Zoom, make sure that share computer sound or share computer audio is enabled. There's a checkbox at the bottom.
Yeah, I think that's it. Next question.
Tim McKean, if all my lights have adjustable color temperature, is there a reason to choose one color temperature over another? Contrast to background, accent lights, etc.
It's really just what you have around you. So if you indoor lights or outdoor lights, I don't think it makes any. If you're near windows, you typically want it to be 56 or something like it. The temperature is really the ambient temperature of it. You can make anything look like any. You can have out 56 look a certain way and 32 look a certain way. It's just a matter of correcting for those. Go ahead, Stuart.
Adjust to match whatever lighting you can't control, and then white balance to that.
Yep, exactly. You're kind of basically adjusting to the lowest common denominator. Next question.
Stuart wants to know, can there be an option in Mukana to edit our questions for better grammar and spelling?
We're probably not going to do it for the users. We may have it on our side to clean so someone can clean something up. And the reason we do that is so that it's not a problem in this group, but as a general problem of getting people to vote on something and then changing what it said is problematic. So you really have to, we can't let people, anything that has voting, you can't let people edit because they can put one question in and then get it voted up and then change the nature of that question with a word or a couple words. And that's not what people voted on. So that's why it's locked.
Between the types of edits in Final Cut.
Not in the speed round, we can't.
Let's work on that one again because Victor asked early on, it just didn't get the votes that the other ones did, but go ahead, Mickey, and then Stuart.
Yeah, I wonder, like, would it be worth trying to get Steve Bass in to discuss not things specific for, like, not how to use Final Cut, but more on the art of editing.
Yeah,
and Chris was going to do the 101, right? Fenwick?
Fenwick.
Yeah, but I getting a couple, get Steve Bays and a couple other folks in to just do a Q&A for Final Cut would be kind of fun. Go ahead, Greg.
I mean, aren't there really only 4 types of cuts, right? A straight cut, a dissolve, an L cut, and a J cut.
I mean, those are the four basic ones. Yeah. Then there's lots of combinations of those. All right, next question. We're gonna go a little heavy just so I can get through the questions here.
Tony Mobley, is there a hardware solution if you can't get an ATEM Mini?
Lots more money.
Yeah, the ATEM Mini for the money is the cheapest hardware switcher in the world, and it's why you should you should probably strongly consider the Blackmagic ecosystem, because I don't see how anybody else survives what they're doing. I'm pretty good at picking trajectories, but they're going to have so many of these into the pipeline. And once you get into a ecosystem, it's really hard to get people out of the ecosystem. Jeffrey, real quick.
IO Gear was working on something. I don't know where they're at with their live streamer, and of course, it really depends on how many inputs you need for your stream.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, but I think that it's a pretty safe bet that this will just keep getting better in that realm. Next question.
Abe wants to know, my company is currently running two workout pre-recorded streams for different programs on Facebook Live and YouTube, but we'll start doing 4 a day. What do you recommend to streamline the process? They're pre-recorded and can be uploaded a couple of days ahead.
And they're live streamed. I mean, you can get into cloud playback, so there's, you can put these files up on AWS, for instance, and play them out, using Media Live. So that you may want to look at that. Might be a lot easier than if they have to be live. I mean, you can also use the Premiere functions, I believe, in YouTube or whatever, and put them up and premiere them, which means that they would go live as well. But if you want them to look like they're live and act like they're live, but not be live, you can I would throw them into AWS and just play it out through Media Live. Go ahead, Stuart.
Alternate solution doing the same thing would actually be vMix with a playlist for the videos, so that they play as if you're playing them live.
Yep. Colin and Jeffrey, but like 5 or 10 seconds each.
Essentially the same. You need to ask yourself whether you want what your budget is. You can play out with virtually any software switcher. Consider throwing a restream in the mix so that you can save some bandwidth on outbound. That's about it.
Okay, next question.
Rich Susan Gilpin wants to know a Mukana option for font size in questions.
Yeah, we'll work on that. Yeah, right now we just change this Command plus on it on the Mac to make them bigger, make everything bigger. But yeah, we'll take a look at that. Next question.
Stuart Fairweather, does anyone know a good firmware coding person looking for recoding his end-of-life Aja cameras?
The hard part with that type of person is the good and available are very, very hard to find, just because it's in high demand. So I think that's the difficult part. But yeah,
if I can, I've actually contacted the guys from Magic Lantern, who aren't interested in anything that's not Canon based, and the guys from the Apetus Axiom, who use the same sensor, and they're unfortunately too busy. But they couldn't offer any suggestions.
Yeah, I think the market also isn't quite. It's hard to find a market big enough to get it. They just didn't sell. They didn't move enough cameras. Next question.
Robert Ober, I'm not seeing the mute and Q&A buttons in Zoom. Latest client on Mac OS. Any ideas?
Q&A button we're taking out because we're using Mukana. So there's no Q&A button that we have here. And then the mute button, I don't know why you wouldn't see it. But if you're an attendee, then you're not going to see any of those things, because you're just a viewer inside of that system. All right. I think we're ready to shift gears. And hopefully, yeah. So we're ready to shift gears here, and we have Victor. Victor is our resident musician who shows us lots of cool things. Does some great music. He does the music at the end of our session. He's got some great. He's putting great stuff and great live saxophone events on Sunday. Are you doing them every Sunday?
No, about every 2 weeks. I do them on Facebook, and then I post them on YouTube. And it's just me playing sax with some background music because I miss performing live.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. They're fantastic. So if you have questions, what we're going to talk about, one of the reasons we wanted to get into this is that we talk a lot about how do I play royalty-free music on my YouTube stream or my Facebook stream, and and if you buy the music, even if you buy it a buyout like Pond5 or many of these other groups, if someone else put it into their show and then claim their show on YouTube, you're still going to get a copyright flag. So, and the only ones that are really safe are the ones that are the YouTube, the audio that you can pull down from YouTube itself. YouTube knows not to grab onto that. So that is the only ones that are truly safe. Or you start building your own, and building your own. I mean, I've been doing this since GarageBand came out, but probably not as good as Victor is going to show us here. So what we talked about is that we wanted to really give people an opportunity to see just the basics of how to put together your own music and how to really, throw these guys up for production. It's not going to be, you're not going to replace someone like Victor as far as composing something that's more complex and deep, but a lot of times you just need something little that goes along the back of what you're someone talking, and just understanding that basic construction we thought would be useful. And there was some requests for it, so we thought we'd throw it in here. So Victor, you've got it all set up, I think. And by the way, if you have questions about composition, if you have questions about GarageBand or Logic, definitely throw those, mostly GarageBand today, but if you want to talk about the comparisons of it, throw those questions into the Q&A, and otherwise we'll have Victor start showing us some of how to put together a piece. Go ahead, Victor.
Yeah, and thank you, Alex, for that. And I'll get into it in a second as far as going into the software. My goal is that by the end of the hour, you guys have a tool, basic tool in GarageBand for free if you're a Mac user, where you have royalty music just by doing loops. I'm not going to require that you have any sense of playing a keyboard or doing a guitar, or certainly not singing, because I can't sing my way out of a paper bag. But what you will be able to do by the end of the session is come out of GarageBand with some music that you can play without getting yourself in hot water. And in addition to that, Alex, if it's okay, I wanted to kind of just go over some basic concepts of composition, because people who are not musicians may be able to relate to this in traditional writing. And a lot of us, and a lot of you are writers. And when we're talking about music, my opinion, and by the way, we have music educators that are in the panel that probably are much, much more educated than I am on this. I'm that guy that came up from high school band, started doing gigs in rock bands, and got my training that way. I had a couple of years of college in music, but it was by no way my major. I was a computer geek for my career. But all that being said, after 48 years of playing the saxophone and doing some stuff with music, some stuff sticks. So the first one I want to talk about is the ability for you to listen. You see, you have to listen to music to be able to appreciate it. You have to listen to it to get better at writing it. So I really want to encourage you to listen as much as you can. Listen to stuff that you love, and especially listen to stuff that you hate, because that's where the magic is. Unless we listen critically and think about, hey, what is it about that I like? Or what is it about that song that I don't like? And then, talk to yourself about that. What is it that you would change if you had the ability to change it? And then what can you adopt from a piece of music to make it your own? You've heard me reference here in office hours about how this is inspired by. The office hours theme was inspired by Austin Powers music that was written by, I believe, is Quincy Jones. Well, I'm no Quincy Jones, but I sure know what style that is, and I was able to take some of those concepts and bring them into that piece. So yeah, do yourself a favor and become a music listener, but more of a critical music listener rather than just I'm hanging back and having a glass of wine.
Well, and I think that one of the things when you talk about listening to music is that there are so many. The beginning of almost every band that I've interviewed a lot of musicians over the years. I used to have a show on a radio station, and we did a lot of it, and it almost always starts with covers. Like they played. We had last week. We had Brian Vander Ark talking about how he played at a Holiday Inn, and he would just play for $1 he'd play you a song, or $5 he'd play you a song. And so there's something about that, I think oftentimes, is that you're learning those riffs, you're learning how those how that music goes together. I think they said that the Beatles did 1,000 shows of other people's music all through Europe before they started recording their own, and so they were able to incorporate and see what worked for them and what didn't work for them. And so that concept of listening and even doing some of it, but copying is something that, you don't want to copy it and just, verbatim, but being inspired by those things, I think, is how most art most art occurs. Is to be inspired by other artists and seeing what they're doing and thinking about how you add your own unique twist to that. Anyway, go ahead, Victor.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of it, is that, if you do any kind of art, you already know this stuff. Just apply it to music. The next time I was going to say, learn some formality to it. If you can learn to read music, and it's never too late to do that. Learn to read music. And why is that a good thing? Well, why do we learn to read words in a book? Because we want to be able to look at a score when it comes to music and analyze what the author of that score, what the composer of that score was trying to say musically. Horizontally, when we talk about melody and the structure horizontally of a song, and then vertically when we're talking about what are the chords that make this music, what are the rhythms that make the music. And being able to read a score is the next level from listening to be able to really decipher what you're doing. Take a piece of Brahms or take a Beethoven symphony and read it, in the score, and you learn an immense amount of things. You're not going to do that overnight, but it's a wonderful
talking about
thing.
Chords. Stephen Kimbrough asks, how do you create a chord progressions that do not sound like an 8-year-old pushed at some buttons?
Yes. No, I absolutely know. Hey, Alex, can you hear this?
We can.
Oh, great. Good. That way I didn't have to go to GarageBand and put something else up. Okay, so let's talk about a couple of things that you can do to do that. The first one is, if we listen to a chord, she's talking about the 8-year-old chords would be just, and those are just what we call a triad, the root, the third, and the fifth. So how can we get some interest into those? Well, one way of doing it is called an inversion, where instead of always playing the root at the bottom of the chord, you can play the third at the bottom, and then the fifth, and then the root. So now we have, instead of.
And can you explain the third and the fifth and what that actually means?
Okay, and again, I'm not a music theory guy, so I'll do my best and be corrected by the panelists who might be able to correct me. So if we take a C major scale.
Can you show your camera from top down? Because now I see your face, but to see your fingers on the keyboard might be helpful also.
I can, with the caveat that I am not a keyboardist, I'm a saxophonist. So that being said, there you go. So if we take that C major scale, the root of that chord is the C, and then the second degree is the D, third is the E, F, G is the fifth, A is the sixth, B is the seventh, and back to C. So if we're talking about a chord, the triad is the root of the chord, the 1, then the 3 for the E, and then the 5. And this is called a major chord. And that's usually related to uplifting music, have major chords. Listen to the difference between this chord and this chord. This is a minor chord. We take the third and just shift it 1 degree or half a step lower. And that's a much sadder sounding chord than a major chord. So by altering the intervals, instead of C, E, G, make it E, G, C, or G, C, same chord, but it has a different tonality. So just by doing that. Another thing you can do is what's called using a bass pedal point. So I'm going to play the same C chord, but now I'm going to go to an F chord, but keep the C in the bottom. So that's creating some differences there. And then another one that is also used, instead of changing the bass or keeping the bass the same, change the bass. There's a Hamilton song that the King sings that uses this technique where the bass just goes down by steps. So it's the same C chord, but by changing the bass note, it gives you a little difference. And you've heard these 1,000 times. So hope that answers that question. We can get into it some more. If you hit me up on Discord, I can talk about extended chord tones like 9ths and 13ths.
And even with the chords, I mean, a lot of times with something like GarageBand, you can you can literally just grab loops, right? I mean, you don't need to. I think some people might get scared off by like, oh, well, there's composing my own music, but I don't know how to play a keyboard. But one of the great things about GarageBand and Logic and a lot of these other tools is that there's a lot of loops available, right?
And that's what we're going to do now. Everything else that we're going to do today is not going to require any fingers or anything. It's going to be all loops. So let's get into that. If you can let me have sharing capability, that would be great. Oops. I can't share yet.
And as a visual
Mickey,
learner,
did you set them? I can't set them up. Did you?
Oh, there we go.
Yeah,
I think I've got it now.
Yes,
Okay, there we go.
And Victor, as a
you.
visual learner, and my history is with keyboards, I'm grateful for that. So those that are getting their music through other instruments, that was helpful. Thank you.
No problem. Let me put my camera back into my mug instead of you guys looking at the top of my keyboard the entire time. Okay, are we able to see my GarageBand opening screen there?
Yep.
Wonderful. Okay, let's get rocking and rolling here. All right, first thing is I'm going to open an empty project in GarageBand just to get us going. And that's going to bring this up. And I'm going to just put audio here, but with no input. Because again, we're not going to be singing or doing anything else. So I'm going to create a track as an audio track here. And then I'm going to hit Command D like 7 times to just duplicate that empty track, because that's what we're going to be using for that. This section of GarageBand we're not going to use today, but here is where you would have your virtual instruments like guitars and keyboards and stuff that come along with that you could trigger with this MIDI keyboard, but we're not going to do that today. So I'm going to close that up. And then this section down here gives you some very cool abilities to put compression and simple reverb and ambience and all that kind of stuff. We may touch upon this later, but again, for the sake of real estate, I'm going to go ahead and hide that. What I want to concentrate on and where I want to deliver on my promise that you would have something that you could do something with is the loop browser that I'm going to bring up right here. This is where all the magic happens. There are 18,690 different loops and items that you can use. So you could go a long time here. So for those of you who don't want to create music here in the linear editor and so on, I'm going to take you to a section here in the loops called Instruments, Jingles. And this is like a filter. That's what that does. It filters that. Now you'll see there are 380 built-in jingles that you can use right now. So let me play just a short one of those for you. Okay, there you go. You've heard that, I'm sure, in podcasts or someplace else. Do you want to use that in one of your productions? Bring it into GarageBand right here to track number 1, and then go ahead and do a share. Export song to disk. I recommend that you put it on WAV or AIFF uncompressed 24. Export it, and you're done. You've got a piece of music now that you can edit, that you can drop into your YouTube, whatever.
And that's it. Thanks for watching, folks.
Yeah, exactly. That was quick. That was okay. We're now we have 32 more minutes, 42 minutes to go. The one thing that is funny about that though is that there are some of these that have been in GarageBand for a long time, and you hear them on commercials. You're like, oh, I know where you got that. You just dropped one in from GarageBand, which you can do at times. I mean, especially if your kids are playing with it, throwing these things in, or if you're doing something that's kind of fun and internal, you don't have a lot of time, and it doesn't need to go very wide. Being able to just throw something in to have fun with it is definitely valid. Jeffrey and then Sky.
Quick clarification on these waves is you're not supposed to be able to put it in anything super commercial like a commercial. So if you were actually hear these jingles in a commercial on TV, for example, that would break the copyright rules of what GarageBand does. So just keep that in mind. These are for podcasts and for YouTubes and things like that. But it's just like anything else. If you make $10,000 off of something, somebody's going to want to cut.
Yeah.
Okay, Jeffrey, I'm going to challenge you on that. I'm going to challenge you on that.
I think Apple's already paid for them all.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I don't think that if you buy new ones and they have a certain license, you're right. But I think Apple paid for these ones. Go ahead, Sky.
My question was, when you download GarageBand, does it come with all of these loops, or do you have to go, because it used to be you have to go suck down a whole bunch of additional sound effects and additional things from Apple?
I don't think it doesn't download them immediately. You have to go in and grab
You
them.
go right here.
I went to start
There it
it.
is.
It started up just now, and it's like 2.8 gigabytes worth.
Yeah,
of
it's a
material.
long, it's a big fat library of good stuff.
And there's a
Now,
question.
my second question quickly was, are there stems to these pre-builds, or are they flat? Are they lockdown items? In other words, stems. Can you separate out the piano, the guitar?
No, not to these. That's what we're going to do next by making our own stems, basically.
And just to answer Martin's question, that's kind of related to what Sky's talking about, is what is the difference between GarageBand and Logic Pro 10? Alex mentioned that his kids will not go back to GarageBand. Is it worth $200?
Yes.
For Logic. Yeah. Obviously, GarageBand is available to everyone, and you can play with it. If you decide you actually want to do some serious stuff, that Logic is a pretty big jump up, and it comes with a lot more tools for composition. It also comes with a lot more loops. I think it's now, instead of 2.8 gigs, it's like 40 gigs of
So yeah,
samples.
let me clarify a couple of things, because I just want to make sure we're giving accurate information. The GarageBand's loops and sounds is more like 20 gigs.
Okay.
And Logic's is more like 65 gigs.
There you go.
Totally worth it. In Logic, I'll give you a difference between Logic and GarageBand. In Logic, I can put those gigs in an external drive and point them to it. In GarageBand, I can't. So
Right. The loops are something different than the essential library then?
You can just download parts of the library. You don't have to download all of it.
I see.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. You have to load your downloads into your resident drive. You can't offload that to. Oh, that's horrible. Okay.
No, they've changed that. You can offload.
In GarageBand?
Oh no, sorry, not in GarageBand.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Got it.
If I can proceed just for the sake of time, Alex, or do you want to continue the questions?
Nope.
Okay, great.
We'll keep on coming back to the questions. We'll just kind of sprinkle them through. Anyway, next question.
So let's just build something
Go ahead.
quick here, just to get you going. So again, a ton of stuff right there, right out of the box. You don't have to do anything else. Let's clear our filters. You can pick now your loops by instrument type. I want electric pianos, whatever it is that you want, you pick it there. Or by genre, hey, I want something that sounds kind of jazzy. Well, it's going to bring up all your jazzy sounding. Here's your jazzy drum set. So that's another way that you can pick sounds. And then finally by description, hey, I want something that is a acoustic guitar, acoustic drums. So that's a couple of ways that you can filter these things out. This is where you're going to do a lot of your playing and a lot of your listening. We don't have a lot of time for that today. So I've gone ahead and picked a couple of sounds so that we can create this little short piece, and I can show you how we put this into place. So when we're talking about music, usually we start off with drums. So I'm going to go over here and look for something called altered state beat. And here's two different beats. Okay, and it's got two of those, with one being a variation of the other. One of the concepts of music is variation is a good thing. You don't want to just have one static beat or everything be exactly the same, because then you don't have an arc. You're not building up to something. So let's drop a couple of these in 4-measure and 4-bar statements. There's two. And sorry about that. My mouse is not being friendly. Okay, and then let's drop 1 and 2. Okay, and then I'm going to highlight all of these and copy them and just paste them a couple more times just till we get to the end of what we're trying to do there. There we go. That's perfectly fine. So now we've got a basic drum beat here that's kind of going to be a little bit different every 4 bars. But it's a good basis. Now, for me, as I'm listening to it, it's like, yeah, that's a little too laid back. I'd like to have a little bit more of a thumpy disco nightclub feel or whatever. So I'm going to go and find something that matches that, because I want to have like a bass drum that's, basically 4 on the floor every beat. It's giving me something. So let's listen to this. There we go. We know that beat, right? So let's add that into our composition here. Again in bar 1, but this time we know we just want the same thing over and over again. So we're going to go ahead and just loop it all the way over. And I'm actually going to extend it 1 bar more than the end, and I'll show you why a little bit later. So now what we've got is we've got this beat that we originally started with and the 4 beat. But to me, that doesn't give me any sense of building. So I'm going to take this original drum part and just slide it over 4 measures so that it actually just starts on bar 4. So now you're going to start just with a bass drum beat. Okay, that's getting a little bit better. So hopefully that makes sense. From there on, usually we do a bass line of some type. So we're going to listen to a couple of bass synthetic lines to add, again, some more flavor and interest to our music here. So here's 4 different examples. Okay, not bad. So let's put a couple of these in starting at that bar. By the way, I don't like the tempo of this at all. So I'm going to bring it way up because it doesn't, I'm not grooving it at all. So let's bring that way up. And now let's listen to it with the bass added to it. Okay, so what it's done here, actually it caught a mistake that I made. It doubled my bass drum, which is not what I wanted. So we're going to go back to that bass drum and we're going to re-add it. So it's giving me 4 on the floor, not 8. So my apologies for that.
And do you start traditionally with a 4/4 time, or does it matter?
Well, it depends on what you're doing. I'm doing that in this particular case. Again, you want to check out, what are you trying to emulate? What feeling you want to do? A 3/4 time is going to give you a different feeling as you're writing than a 4/4 beat or a 7/4 beat. So you kind of have to just play that by your compositional ear. Let's see if I fix this problem real quick. Okay, that's fine. So I'm going to loop that bass there until the end of that, just to keep things simple here. And again, I'm extending that bass drum because I want it to end with that bass drum beat. And now we're going to do a little bit of a synthesizer. So, and again, I'm doing this very quickly to show you. Obviously, you would be doing this by exploring all the different sounds as you were doing it. So let's listen to this. I know you'll recognize this type of thing. We've heard that 1,000 times or something equivalent. So let's drop that in there and let's go ahead and play that throughout the song. And then I'm going to show you how to give that some interest. So we're going to put it to the end of the song here, almost the end. But let's do something a little bit different with synthesizers in the beginning so it sounds more like an intro. So I found another synthesizer patch here called harp patterns. And we're going to drop that in. And now you'll hear what this sounds like. Okay, that's kind of cool. So let's drop that into the beginning of the song. And bring this back because I only wanted to go for that long. And now let's listen to what that sounds like in the beginning, starting to take shape now. Now we have the bass drum and we have a little bit of an interesting synthesizer track. Okay, so that works, but you'll notice that because I put those 2 synthesizers in the same track, it gets so much louder when this one comes in. It's like distracting. Either this has to come down or the first one should come up. Well, you can do that very easily here. If you go to Mix and Show Automation, this opens up something called Track Automation that lets you then add a couple of keyframes and very quickly at either side, basically, lower that more obnoxious synth and then listen to it and raise it to taste. Okay, so a very simple way to kind of do real-time mixing by using automation, and it works to keep that going. because music is also symmetrical at times. I like what I did in the beginning here. So why don't we put that in the end so it basically ends the same way it starts. So listen to this ending.
Victor.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt you, but if you do an automation there, is there a way to see from this view now that you've gone back that you've made an adjustment with those keyframes? Are we seeing them somewhere?
Absolutely. You can just go right here to the automation and see what you want.
But if
Does that answer your question?
No, can you see it from your the other view? While you're at
no, you cannot. No, you can't see it on here that I am aware of. I believe in Logic, I can see that. I know in Pro Tools, for example, you for sure can see that kind of a thing.
Cool, thanks.
Now I know what you're saying.
And
okay,
I'm going to quickly ask,
yes.
as you bring loops into the sequence, they adopt to the beats per minute that you have preset in the sequence, no matter what the
yes,
copy
they
that?
do. They adopt to not only the beats per minute, but they also adopt to the key that you happen to start the music in. In this case, it was C. So
really?
It's a cool. Yeah, they do. They can be altered that way. Not a problem. Magic. So, okay. Magic. So again, in the ending here, we can see that we can just go back and. Okay, so I'm going to stop here and kind of have Alex, you guide me, because the process goes on for a couple of more tracks. We had a vocal, we had some horns, and it's the same process. And by the end of it, then you have something that then you can then mix down. In the case of GarageBand, you can use these sliders to mix it down. Let me bring up a finished project of this particular song just to take advantage of time here. And I'll show you what that looks like. Okay.
Are those sliders keep frameable as you're mixing? Do they change?
Yes, they remember everything. So when you do your automated mix, it will remember all of it. Absolutely, 100%.
Awesome. And you can have an external key slider controller as well.
Yes, you can use a MIDI controller like that micro one that we've seen from Korg to control your fades and etc. So here you're going to listen to the finished version of what I did, basically. And you'll notice that I used some automation here to bring up the horns and give them a little more flavor when she's not singing. You'll hear her singing in a minute. I also used the master to do a fade out. So let's listen to kind of this finished product rather than having you watch me make the rest of it. I want you guys to go out and do that. So let's listen to this 40-second clip that you could then use for whatever you want. There we go.
Great.
And that probably took me, when I first time I did it, maybe 40 minutes from start to finish. And, at the end there, I was doing some, neat little sweetening tricks. For example, if you go to her vocal, I can just listen to her and mute it. And I added some reverb down here. And then you see that on the horns, I did some automation on the horns because they were getting lost basically with the vocals. So I'm gonna go ahead and put them on solo as well. So by emphasizing where they go, and she's not singing there, so they kind of become the star of the show. And you can, of course, do all of this, do all the automation. It has compressors. We could go on for a long time.
What I will say is that you can get lost in this. Building these. You get into all the loops and you start playing with it, and suddenly like half the day has gone by, and you've been playing around with these things. It's so much fun to put this stuff together. And I used to do a lot more of it in Soundtrack, the old music thing that doesn't exist anymore. Where that's where I built a huge number of loops. At the time, I had to build something new every day. And you just sit there and just play with them and try to get the feel of exactly what it is. And you can really build it to exactly to what you want. I was inspired looking at Victor's. I was like, I'm gonna have to take that soundtrack out that I use for my coffee thing and compose something for my coffee tutorial.
And that's the thing. I mean, this is a little disco thing, but you can build classical things because there's violins, and I mean, it's amazing what you can do. Hopefully, that gives you a flavor of it, because I didn't want to just be showing you that the whole time. The challenge is for you. Those of you who have Macs, those of you who have GarageBand already, I want to do a challenge like we did with the teacher coffee thing for each of you to write something using this technique in the next week, and let's get it posted under music. I think it would be a lot of fun, and at the end, everybody will have something that can be used, and I'll be more than happy to help you along the journey. But again, I didn't want to focus the entire time on the screen without the questions and things that are probably a lot more valuable. So I appreciate you giving me the time to
fantastic
to show that part.
No, that's great. And how do you add the master track? I'm just going to ask that question, and then I'll.
Oh, very, very simple. You go to, let me go to my menus here. It is under mix menu, and it says create volume fade out on main input.
Yep. There you go.
And that is how you add that master track.
All right, back to the questions. Stuart, if you've got questions from what you've seen, make sure to throw them in here, and we'll ask them. Go ahead, Stuart.
Victor, you referred to moving the levels up and down as automation. That would be the same as rubber banding audio levels in, say, EDIUS or Resolve and what have you. Is there actual automation, such as, say, from a MIDI keyboard or like MIDI mixer where you control the levels on the fly?
Okay, I'm not going to speak to GarageBand because literally Sunday was the first time I picked up GarageBand in 3 years, but it's so much like Logic that it was pretty easy. In Logic, absolutely. I can automate anything I want in Logic via MIDI automation. So for example, if I have a VST or AU effect and I want the reverb to come up and then come down, I can literally automate any parameter on that VST or AU, as well as, of course, volume and many other things. It's all automatable in Logic. I won't swear by GarageBand because I simply don't know.
And I do think it is on GarageBand, but I'm not 100% certain, as Victor said. But it's yeah. Stuart here asks, is there a Windows equivalent to GarageBand? Go ahead, Lucas.
Yeah, that's kind of hard to answer because, at least to my knowledge, there's not one application that will do it all like GarageBand does it with all those loops and stuff. But if you want to have the DAW, so the audio workstation part, Reaper would be good. And if you want more of the loops part, there is a Magic's Music Maker, which has at least a few loops and stuff. It's not. I don't think it's great or it's at the same level as GarageBand, but there's a little bit of stuff. And there are also free loops and stuff available on the internet, but you would have to curate it for yourself. That's kind of the wonderful thing about GarageBand, that it's all there, but you could do it in Reaper, for instance, which is, I think, $60 or something. You could do it with free loops from other sources. That would be totally possible.
Go ahead, Jeffrey, and then Stuart.
Yeah, I agree with that on Magic's. It's a pretty decent program, but not like GarageBand. A lot of people that have PCs, what they end up doing is they go online and they find VMware Fusion, which is the emulator for Mac, and then run GarageBand. But you can also run it on your iOS. It doesn't do all the full features of the Mac, but it does a pretty decent job.
Go ahead, Sky.
There is a software called Sonic Fire Pro. It's not what this is, but it is a stems-based concept that you can buy from their library and break out your music and also do that magic, pull the music as long as you want, change the pitch.
Stuart and then Victor.
Yeah, I asked the question because about a decade ago when I was playing with music and audio stuff, there was a magazine out of the UK called Computer Music, and they actually had software on the cover discs, but obviously cover discs aren't something that exist anymore. What I did notice since I asked that question and I was on Google, Garageband for PC.org seems to be a port of being able to use GarageBand on PC, but I only found that after asking the question.
Yep. Go ahead, Victor.
So not for free, but Leland put one up called Serato, and that's for beat makers, and it's just essentially the same thing. I mean, the other one that's very popular is Fruity Loops in Windows world, and it's the same type of concept. Ton of content out there for Fruity Loops, not free, but it'll get you there, and it's a lot cheaper than having to pay copyrights to somebody or having to pay me to write a song for you.
And you know, one of the things that's great about loops, if you start really searching for them, is they're not that expensive to buy gigs and gigs and gigs. I've had ones where it was like an African feel, and so I went out and got African loops, and there were hundreds or thousands of them that I bought for like I don't know, like $50 or something. But it was, and then I was able to put together whatever I wanted, and the ability. This is like one of those basic skills of being able to throw something together that is really important to develop if you've got a little extra time, just because it lets you customize stuff in ways that your clients don't expect. And then the next step up from there is hiring someone like Victor to put it together, which is not as it. I mean, I don't know what Victor charges, but I have found that it has been very cost effective to hire composers to put stuff together, because it is, you know, I'm not paying for all the rights to those things, and so it's easier to, you know, you're paying for it one way or the other. And one of the things that we found is a lot of our clients have moved, especially with streaming, they've moved to, we're going to spend literally $150,000 for the year. These are big clients. $150,000 for the year. We're going to have to make 10 or 12 songs, and that's the songs for all of our events, and we own them. You know, and we don't have to. You know, we can do whatever we want with them. We can play them however we want, and people know when they're in our event, that's what that sound is for that year. And then every year they just have a budget for that. But they're doing. You're talking about companies that are doing 10,000 events a year, but rather than dealing with all the royalties and rights and everything else, it's just easier to pay someone to do it. And it's a huge value to have a composer put something together that's just what you want. Jeffrey, and then Victor, and then Zach.
One more program to talk about, and that's Band in a Box. It's a little bit more expensive, and it does a little bit more than well, it doesn't do loops in but you can actually put down chord progressions, and then it'll play that way. And then you just go to a website. If you're not sure how chord progressions work, there are websites that'll create chord progressions for you that you can just plot right in and go from there.
Go ahead, Victor.
So yeah, let me talk a little bit about the difference between, you know, what we just did there and putting and dropping some loops, which we can all do, and something like hiring a composer. I mean, when you hire me to do that, I'm not going to do what I just did and say, you know, charge you $1,000 to do that. That's not what's going to happen. We're going to have a session where we're going to talk about your concept. We're going to talk about what it is that you need, what kind of event it is that you're planning for. Usually for something like this, if it was a big movie or documentary, that's a different story. But if we're talking about producers like us, we're talking about 15-second jingles, 30-second jingles or stingers, something that doesn't take a lot of time, but I'm still going to want to know what is it that you're trying to put across? What is the idea you're trying to put across? Give me some examples of music that you like. An OH member that I won't call out, but he hired me to do something, and he said, hey, I really like the music from Justified. And I'm like, oh, I'm familiar with the music from Justified. So I went and listened to it again. And then based on that, inspired by that, I was able to create something for him that was 30 seconds long at a very, I think, reasonable budget. And that gave him the feel of that without having to use that exact music. So that's kind of the process. I use extensive libraries of whether it is orchestral music, horn music, whatever it happens to be. And if I have to hire a singer, I'll do that. If I have to hire a guitarist, I'll do that. So that's the difference between the process, and it becomes really yours because it's inspired by what vision you have through my talent set of being able to do that.
Zach?
Yeah, I have a question about YouTube rights. Okay, yeah. I have a question about YouTube rights. Maybe Jeffrey, Alex, you could answer this. If you have a jazz, Victor, if you have a jazz trio playing, you're not hearing the melody, using part of the tune with the jazz trio that's either improvising or just playing the chords to say Love for Sale or any standard. Can you use that music in YouTube without it being flagged? No melody, just like improvisation, jazz trio, or not, you know, more than a trio.
Go ahead, Jeffrey, and then Victor.
The short answer is no, but there is a thing called the 25% rule. It's an unwritten rule that basically says if you change a song by 25%, then it kind of becomes your own. And then there's a legal battle behind that idea. But if you were just to do the chords and it sounded a lot like the actual song, yeah, you could definitely get dinged for it.
Good, Victor.
Well, how about all the songs that use the same chord progressions? Right. I mean, many songs,
it's
in rock, for example, half the rock tunes are the same rock,
It's a sticky
Absolutely. But as you know, by being a musician, Zach, it's more than just about the chord progression. It's also the rhythm progression of what you're doing it. Are you using the same form, verse, chorus, bridge, verse? So it's all those things combined. Obviously, chord progressions in and of themselves are not going to be copyrightable. But we've seen plenty of cases where somebody did take a part of a chord progression, and those have been disputed and sometimes upheld.
Well,
the biggest lawyer wins.
Well, and also just remember
I don't want to get involved in that.
The machine just looks at a hash. Like it's not looking. It doesn't have. It looks at like I'm looking. It's doing pattern recognition, to find what it's doing. It's not like some person's listening to it. But it's gotten really good. Like the live stuff that Brian did last week, Brian Vander Ark did last week. Both got. I mean, immediately got flagged. I didn't get a strike for it, but that's an acoustic cover of his own song that created a flag. So it doesn't have. And he was meandering around with it. It's not even like he hit it right on, and still the machine still saw that. So it's it can pick up a lot now that it didn't do at the beginning. Go ahead, Stuart, and then Victor.
Yeah, YouTube's AI will flag anything. I think I've mentioned before, there's a second YouTube channel called Sarah for Taylor Swift, and it has behind the scenes and different versions of her performances, and it gets flagged on a regular basis. But back to what Zach was saying about chord progressions, that has actually gone to court cases and what have you, and the basic structures of music can't be copyrighted. It's gone all the way to the US Supreme Court for that one.
Jeff.
While that's true, will YouTube still flag you?
Yeah.
Here's a good example. I got rhythm changes as all you.
There's a difference between the law and what YouTube does. YouTube's going to flag you out of. It's going to now flagging again. Remember, there's strikes and there's flags. So flagging might mean that you can't monetize it. It might mean that it might knock your video out of it. And YouTube will always err on the side of the copyright holder because their contracts are with the copyright holders, not with you. You're getting just remember, YouTube is providing you a free service where you're allowed to put up a video and get to lots of people and not pay anything for it. So you are, so they don't owe you anything. Like, just make sure we're all clear. Like YouTube, when we do this and we complain about it and we all whatever, YouTube doesn't owe you anything. And so the thing is that now they want to make it available to you, so they do the best they can. But the copyright holders are paying for YouTube, right? And so they're gonna the machine is always going to lean towards that. Now you can fight those copyrights if you want. What we find easier is to be super careful about it and then not have to deal with it because it's you're now in a. So, but
this is for live streaming. I don't want to fool around. Victor, let me ask you specifically. I got rhythm changes. Right, it's 100 tunes use that chord progression. It was so important, and so that would be like a good example.
Well, Jeff Francis had a good example. A 12-bar blues. You're not going to be able to. I mean, you put up 12-bar blues out there. They shouldn't flag it, but will they? I mean, they flag colors, color bars.
The only way to know is to, like, when we get materials that we have to play out, we play them into a what we call a burner account to just see what happens, and just see how YouTube handles it, because it's not just, it also has to do with how the copyright holder handles it. So if you look at, like, I don't know about Taylor Swift, but I know like Katy Perry, most of her stuff is track. So she doesn't even demonetize it. She hasn't in the past. I don't know if she's changed that, but they just track it, which means that all these people are doing all these riffs off of it. And if you look at like Taylor Swift, what was it? Shake It. Like, I'm too old to know these things.
Shake It Off.
Shake It Off. There's like thousands of music videos to that song that people did because Taylor Swift didn't block it. didn't flag it. Like that's a decision by the copyright holder to say, I'm going to allow that to be viral. I'm going to allow that to become part of the culture. And it's, in my opinion, the smartest way to go for the copyright holders, but they're not all smart. Go ahead, Victor, and then Jeff.
Just want to mention that, it depends how aggressive they're going to be. For example, the Eagles, the leader of the Eagles was testifying in Congress. He says he has 60 people whose full-time job is to pursue copyright infringement in YouTube. 60 people. So it depends. If you go and play a Eagles tune, you're going to get a flag, a strike. You're not going to get a high, sorry, you can't monetize.
Especially when you're not making new music anymore, then that's what's paying for your, for your house.
Right. But every time I do a sax jam, I get not strikes, but I get flagged on every song because I do covers. Yeah. And it's like, okay, I don't want to make money anyways. Fine. Yeah. Enjoy the $3 you're going to make.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, you get a better chance of actually getting a strike when you're. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, real quick, and then we'll go to Jeff.
You get a better chance of getting a strike if you're monetizing the video rather than doing that. Just look at the Stairway to Heaven incident as opposed to music. That's a fun little article right there.
Jeff?
Yeah, the important thing to remember is that YouTube does its own thing with AI. That's the flags and strikes. And then actual copyright lawsuits, it's a civil law, so the copyright holder has to bring a copyright lawsuit against you. YouTube takes that all out because they just take down your video. They've set up those means for that. Someone mentioned fair use in the chat, and boy, that's a dangerous ground. Fair use is very restricted. There are 4 elements to it, and it is way too tough to prove fair use outside of a very small snippet used in an educational or analysis or commentary critique purpose.
Yeah,
biggest lawyer wins.
Well, and the other thing is that if you actually get, again, YouTube's just going to take it down. They're not going to worry about it. If you really want to get into a fight, you just have to make sure that that's going to be expensive. And we just look at it as, is it worth it? And usually not. Okay, now we're going to go into start answering. We're going to go into a little bit of a speed round here. TJ Asher said, I had done some music for a video in GarageBand, and a year after the video was posted, YouTube got a copyright notice because someone has claimed the copyright on Apple Music. Is there any way to avoid that? The more complex you build it with the Apple loops, the less chance you're going to have that it gets ID'd. If it's really all Apple tracks, you could probably contest that pretty quickly. Go ahead, Victor.
Yeah, just exactly. If it's Apple tracks, contest it. You're going to win that one. Yeah, I'm sure Apple would back you.
Yeah, and you can contest these, and then they have to contest it. Interesting thing here is if you contest it, and then they push back and they're wrong, it's super expensive on their side. so it's like, I think it's $250,000 an infringement. So the other side of that is if you push back on these, you can, it doesn't cost you anything to push back, but if they demand it, they have to make sure that they're in the right, or it's going to get expensive on their end. Tim Van Duzen asks, how much difference is there between the desktop and iPad versions of GarageBand? Go ahead, Victor.
There's a huge difference in the engine. Okay, and when you look at the shell of it, the UI, all of that is very, very similar, but the complexity is so much deeper in logic. For $200, in my opinion, there is no better value than Logic Pro 10 as a DAW, in my opinion. And again, I use it primarily for composing, and I use Pro Tools if I want to bring in live musicians. But for composing, there's no better deal out there than $200. You have some synthesizers that come included with Logic Pro that literally sold for $5,000 of software when they came out, and then Apple bought the company and just brought them right into Logic.
Yeah, it's and again, if you're an educator or a student, remember that for $200 you can get everything: Final Cut, compressor, Motion, Logic. It's the best deal on earth if you want for media creation. If you're a student or educator, that is about as good as it gets when it comes to that. Victor, go ahead.
I just wanted to follow up on Jeff. I'll post this. I went to the Apple site about using royalty-free loops. It basically, the bottom line is, don't worry, you can make commercial music with GarageBand. You can distribute the loops. Yeah. The only thing
assuming you're using the loops that, oh, good.
Yeah, yes, of course, using their content. The only thing you can't do is distribute the loops themselves as your product.
Right.
That is against their copyright.
Jeffrey?
Yeah, well, I sent you a message on that, Victor, to where I was going with that. But the whole point of where I was going to go was on the iPad. The best thing you can get the iOS. What was really cool is I would always start a song on a plane back when we flew, and then I could actually send that over to my Mac to finish. You can also export some of that stuff over to things like Logic Pro and some of the other programs, so you can continue to work on it if you need to really expand your thought on that.
And by the way, a long plane ride with headphones and Logic or GarageBand is a great way to have the flight disappear. You know, you just sit there and just build up your own stuff and work on it. I've lost a lot of flights that way. Laura asks, when you raised the tempo and it doubled your bass track beat instead, what keystroke caused that to happen?
That was the keystroke between this finger and that keyboard on my Mac. It was a user error. I did not pay attention when I dropped in that quarter beat bass drum that my tempo was set at 68. So when I dropped that beat in and then doubled the tempo to 130, it did exactly what it was supposed to do. It played quarter notes at 130, not 68. So that's what happened there, Laura. Totally my mistake.
Kyle asks, what are the keyboard shortcuts for zoom in, zoom out in GarageBand? And can I change it to match Final Cut 10?
Interesting. We tried this because the keyboard shortcuts for zooming and zoom out, when I tried this yesterday with Jeffrey on Zoom, would not work. So I could not zoom in on stuff. But I believe if you go to System Preferences and its accessibility, you can do the normal shortcuts there and enable them. I believe it's Option Command 8 to toggle them off and on. Is that right,
Victor?
Jeff?
I think the question is asking about zooming on the timeline in GarageBand itself.
Like zooming the timeline.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, and I don't have it open yet, but if you saw in the top right corner of the DAW, there is a control there. It's a little slider where you can zoom in or zoom out very easily. In Logic, you can do that both horizontally and vertically, so you can see a wider audio or MIDI
and is there
well.
a keystroke for that in GarageBand as far as zoom in, zoom out?
If there is, I don't know it because I'm really bad about using keyboard shortcuts. Not a pro. Don't do like me. It's just who I am.
Michael J asks, hey, Victor, more of a comment than a question and can be used for those keyboard Command K opens the musical keyboard map to your computer keyboard so you can play software instruments with ease. So that's you can use Command K and then use your actual keyboard as a keyboard.
Really good catch. And yes, you can do that. So thank you for pointing that out. I love it when you guys make things right. That's right. You can do that. I just use this thing because it's like $50 and it's a little MIDI keyboard. You can put a sustain pedal to it and it's made by MIDI Plus Ecamm 320 and it's great for a laptop.
Jeff asks, Victor, can you show how you're using mouse pose?
Yeah, I suppose I can. Let me go back to sharing my screen. Hold on a second. And let me share desktop too. So yeah, this is on my second screen and you can see mouse pose is here on my menu. And you guys see that okay? And basically I have both mouse clicks and keystrokes. So as I go into a page and I hit something, you'll see that when I hit an item, you can see the keystroke. And if I do a command space, for example, you'll see that it shows that. And then I've also created a shortcut that if I wanted to zoom in on something, not zoom in, but give a highlight, it'll do that. And it's called Spotlight. And it'll kind of spotlight that for 3 seconds or however long you set it for. Mouse pose can do a bunch of other things here in preferences with, when it deactivates, when it activates, custom keystrokes, what color do you want your mouse clicks to be, all kinds of miscellaneous stuff as far as starting it up and so on. Mouse Play is Boinks, right? And it's just Oliver. And I think it is a subscription-based software now, not a one-time purchase.
It's a great tool for teaching when you're demonstrating software.
Absolutely.
Because people can see what key commands you're doing and they can highlight your mouse.
Yeah. No, it's really great. It's a great, if you're doing any kind of training with software, it's kind of key to, with live streaming and so on and so forth. It's really a key tool on the Mac. Dale Nabetta asks, Alex said it was immediately flagged. So does that mean within the first 30 seconds or so? I'm not sure what I said it was immediately flagged, but the song from last week with Brian, it was flagged right after the event ended. So we didn't get, our stream didn't get kicked down. It's just that as soon as it ended, it showed a flag. So it had already processed it and figured it out. And again, he's a modern musician, so he's not, he's just demonetizing it, but not blocking it. It's just the old-fashioned musicians that block it. And usually most of them have just suffered from not getting as many plays, by kind of putting themselves out. But most of the modern musicians are doing some version of demonetization or even just track. So it just depends on what they're doing, because it's just you have to figure out how you use it. I think most musicians now, and I can be corrected here, but most of the musicians, Brian stated this, is that your music now is something that you're building your community around, but you're not trying to sell it on its own. It makes some money, but it's really not the primary. And I think that it was touring. Musicians started using music as the loss leader for their tours, and now they can't do that. So now they're moving to things like Patreon and other things. And the artists that had already spent a lot of time on Patreon have had very little impact on their income because they were already making reasonably good money. The numbers are in Patreon, by the way, are significant for some of these artists. So they're doing pretty well if they can build up a community. And not all of them are as equal level of skill. It's really about how they interact with their community, and to how much money they make. It's not some of them are really, really great musicians and they have a little bit of following, and the other ones they're okay musicians and they have an incredible following. And it really has to do with their community. And this gets back to what I've said in the past, which is that I believe that content is not king. Content is the honeypot. Community is king. And community is what drives businesses. It's what drives, a lot of those things. It's not the content gets them there, but what keeps them there and develops that relationship and develops a business is the community that you build around it. So anyway, Victor, thank you. That was great. I think
thanks. I hope I fulfilled the mission of showing you at least how to get some music out. And it was really fun and nerve-wracking to do this, by the way. I got to be honest with you. The whole time I'm doing it, I'm looking at the participants dropping and the panelists dropping, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm dying on the vine.
You're not dying at all. Like
Victor, you did great.
You're a great
communicator, man. You're a great communicator.
Yeah, you did a great job, and it's
all those years of podcasting.
yeah, exactly. No, you did a fantastic job, and we'll put up music challenges the way we did education challenges, and we'll figure out how to challenge everybody towards a certain time in the future where people can try to build their own little mix of something, because I think that the first step is getting over the hump of understanding how that works. The second step is doing a little bit of it and then coming back and asking questions. So I think that we'll start working on that. Go ahead, Paul.
I just wanted to say that I know that I miss typical Mac user.
I don't need another rabbit hole to go down. No.
Yeah,
That's why I'm trying to bring my wife in so I can see her at some point in my day.
Exactly. All right. Thank you so much, Victor, and thanks to everyone here. You did a great job. The attendees, you did a great job of asking questions and voting on them. The panelists did a great job of talking about them. So well done to everyone. Another successful morning. We have tomorrow. We're talking about we're going to have Chris Summers in talking about camera logistics and dealing with challenging locations. Thursday we have Daria Musk coming in to talk about her journey as a musician, building a community, and then education on Friday and Saturday. So and I forgot to tell Mickey to hit it, but there we go. I was like, something's missing here. I'm talking, but I don't hear the mix that Victor made for the thing and we put it together. So anyway, have a great rest of your day or morning or tomorrow. Thank you so much for coming, hanging out with us every day. And we'll see you tomorrow. All right. Bye, guys.